Hmm, quick question. If someone told you that having $500,000 in savings makes you comfortable in retirement, would you believe them? Because that's what most people assume. 500,000, maybe a paid-off HDB flat, a bit of CPF. That sounds like made it, right? But here's the strange part. When you actually look at what separates an average retiree from someone sitting comfortably in the top 10%, the gap isn't what people expect. It's not double, it's not even close. Okay, let's slow down for a second. Picture a couple, both in their early 60s. They've worked their whole lives, civil service, then a small business. They own their flat outright. They've got some CPF life payouts coming in monthly. On paper, they look fine. Not rich, not poor, just fine. Now picture another couple, same age, same neighborhood, even the same hawker center they eat lunch at every Tuesday. But their number looks completely different. Not because they earned some crazy salary, not because they hit 4D. Something else happened along the way. And that's really the question today. What actually separates a fine retirement from a top 10% retirement in Singapore? Because once you see the real numbers, you start noticing something uncomfortable. Most people are optimizing for the wrong things entirely. Let's start with the obvious part. Most Singaporeans think retirement wealth is mainly about CPF. And look, CPF matters. It really does. Between the ordinary account, special account, and eventually your retirement account feeding CPF life, it forms a real floor under your finances. But here's the thing nobody tells you at 25. CPF was designed to give you a floor, not a lifestyle, a floor. So if your entire retirement plan is CPF will handle it, you're aiming for average, maybe even below average depending on your income history. And average, statistically, is not the top 10%. So what does separate the top group? Three things mainly, and none of them are flashy. The first one is property equity that isn't fully used up. Here's what I mean. A lot of retirees technically own valuable property, especially those in older estates where prices have climbed over decades. But if that property is your only home and you're living in it, its value doesn't actually put cash in your pocket. It's wealth on paper. The retirees in the top 10% usually have property that either generates income through renting out a spare room or a second unit, or property that's been right-sized, intentionally downgraded to release equity into investments. That's a mindset shift most people never make. They think of their flat as the finish line. Top earners think of it as one asset among several. The second thing, and this one surprises people, is dividend-generating investments. Not speculative stock picks, not crypto gambles, boring, steady income. REITs, dividend-paying blue chips, sometimes a diversified portfolio built over 20 or 30 years through regular contributions. Here's a simple way to picture it. Imagine two gardeners. One plants a single large tree and waits, hoping it eventually bears enough fruit to feed the whole family. The other plants dozens of smaller trees across many years. Some grow slowly, some barely survive. But by year 30, that gardener has an entire orchard quietly producing fruit every single season without much extra effort. That second gardener isn't smarter. They just started earlier, and they kept planting even when nothing seemed to be happening. The third factor is debt discipline in your working years. This one's less exciting, but it might be the most important. Every dollar that goes toward interest on car loans, credit cards, or lifestyle financing in your 30s and 40s is a dollar that can't compound for your 60s. The top 10% aren't necessarily people who earned dramatically more. Many of them earned solidly average incomes. What set them apart was what they didn't spend.
Now, let's actually talk numbers, because vague ideas don't help you plan. Think about a working professional earning a comfortable but very normal Singapore salary across their career. Nothing extraordinary. If that person consistently invests a portion of their income starting in their late 20s, alongside steady CPF growth and eventual property equity, by retirement age, they can realistically reach a net worth in the range of $1 to $1.5 million. That's illustrative, not a guarantee, but it's a realistic outcome for consistent, disciplined saving over 3 decades. Compare that to someone who saves a bit here and there, relies mainly on CPF, and treats their flat purely as a home rather than an asset. Their retirement net worth often lands closer to $300,000 to $400,000. Still functional, still enough to get by. But that gap, that's the entire story right there. It's not about income level. It's about which of those 3 behaviors you actually practiced consistently for decades. But here's where most people misunderstand the whole picture completely. They think reaching the top 10% requires massive risk, aggressive stock picking, property flipping, some secret investment strategy only rich people know about. It doesn't. The retirees who end up comfortably ahead usually did something almost boring. They automated their investing, they avoided lifestyle inflation as their salaries grew, they paid off debt aggressively instead of slowly, and they treated their 60s as something to plan for in their 30s, not something to figure out later. Meanwhile, the retirees who struggle the most often aren't people who made one huge mistake. It's usually death by 1,000 small decisions. Upgrading the car every few years, never quite starting that investment account because the timing wasn't right, paying minimum balances on credit lines for a decade. None of those choices feel dramatic in the moment, but compounded over 30 years, they create that gap we talked about earlier, the gap between fine and top 10%. So where does that leave you watching this right now? Honestly, it leaves you in a good position because unlike income, which is often somewhat fixed by your industry or role, these 3 factors, property strategy, investment consistency, and debt discipline, are almost entirely within your control. You don't need a 6-figure salary to end up ahead. You need decades of small, boring, repeated decisions stacked in the right direction. Let's go back to that first couple and that second couple sitting at the same hawker center. The difference between them was never luck. It wasn't some hidden inheritance or lucky stock pick. It was 30 years of quiet decisions made long before retirement ever became a real conversation. So the real question isn't what net worth puts you in the top 10%. The real question is 20 or 30 years from now, which version of that story do you want to be sitting in? Because right now, today, you're already writing that answer, one decision at a time.